Credit, when managed the right way, can help anyone take control of their money. Leveraging credit can give you access to cash, save you money, and help you purchase things you otherwise wouldn't be able to have. That's not to say that carrying balances and accumulating debt that you can't pay back is a wise move, because it's not. However, there's a difference between credit and debt. That's why I'm so excited to talk with Christina Roman from Experian about how people can master their money with credit. If you view credit and debt as one and the same, I hope you finish this episode feeling empowered to have the system work with you, not against you. Hey there, I'm Rhea Reeves, and over a decade ago, I turned my life around through budgeting. I went from being an overspender deep in credit card debt to being the founder and full-time money coach of City Girl Savings. Now, I help women work towards their dream life and tap into their financial power one budget at a time. I fully believe you can live a life you love with a budget, and I'm living proof. The weekly City Girl Savings podcast focuses on the intersection of money and the City Girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial. Now, most people have heard of Experian, as it's one of the three major credit bureaus along with TransUnion and Equifax. Experian has been around for more than 125 years and currently employs over 21,000 people across 30 countries. Today, I'm speaking with Christina Roman, who works at Experian in consumer education and awareness. Hi, Christina. Welcome to the show. So happy that you're here. And I would love it if we can start by you just giving some background about Experian and the work you do for the company.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here today. And as you mentioned, Experian is one of the three major credit bureaus. And this is what a lot of people know Experian for. But what many people also don't realize is that Experian is actually a global data and technology company, as well as we power opportunities for people and businesses around the world. We help to redefine lending practices, uncover and prevent fraud, simplify healthcare, deliver digital marketing solutions, and actually gain deeper insights into the automotive market. That's something that a lot of people don't know about Experian. And we do this all using a unique combination of data analytics and software. We're a Financial Times Stock Exchange 100 company, and we're listed on the London Stock Exchange. That's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. And we operate in 32 countries. So we assist millions of people to realize their financial goals and help them to save time and money. Now, my role at Experian is a consumer education and advocacy manager. And what that is just a fancy way of saying that I help to manage our free educational materials. And I work with media to help them to learn about credit and the role that Experian plays in the credit reporting process. I also manage our Education Ambassador program, which is an employee advocacy program where we train Experian employees on credit fundamentals that they can then share in their local communities. Now, this is a volunteer-based program, but we have trained over 1,000 Experian employees on credit so that they not only can benefit their own financial health, the financial health of their family members and friends, but we also encourage them to go out into the community, to work with nonprofits that they're already connected with, to go to their children's schools and teach about credit, or just to work with any organization that they're passionate about to help their members to learn about credit. This is an important aspect of our company because it's our feet on the ground that's out there providing credit education. And I'm really proud to be able to manage this program.
Holy cow. Well, I will admit that I am one of the individuals that had no idea that Experian did so much more than just provide us with our credit score. And it's so amazing to hear everything that Experian is doing, but also the work that they're doing to educate employees who can then educate their communities. Because I think, as I kind of mentioned in the introduction, there's this notion that people think credit and debt are one and the same, and they're really not. And credit can actually make a big positive impact in a person's life if they understand the difference between the two. So I love that Experian is really working to help bridge that knowledge gap.
It's something that my boss always said, and something that I've held on to is credit is a financial tool, debt is a financial problem. So we want to
Yes.
separate those two ideas that credit and debt are one and the same. Because if you look at credit as something to be avoided, then you're not really living credit smart. And I know growing up, this was something that I was always told: stay away from credit. Credit is awful. And because I wasn't taught how to actually use credit, I was taught from a fear based perspective of how credit worked. I actually made a lot of mistakes when it did come time for me to start using credit. I ruined my credit in my 20s. And so this is a myth I work actively to bust, that they're not one and the same. And it's important for you to build credit, not just so that you can apply for credit cards or to take on debt. This is actually because credit can be used when you're renting an apartment. Credit can be used when you're applying for a cell phone. Your credit history could be used when you're applying for a job. So there are so many aspects of credit and the role that it plays in your life that people don't realize. So it's important to start building credit as soon as you can, but to be smart about it. And that's something I think we'll talk about today, right?
Oh, definitely. And I want to add, I know you had mentioned that you kind of messed your credit up in your 20s because you were approaching it more so from a fear-based place, like don't mess with it, leave it alone. I had a similar outcome, meaning I messed my credit up in my 20s, but I didn't have a fear-based approach. I was like, oh my gosh, these credit lines, $1,000. Oh, let me go spend. Like there was absolutely no fear, but there was also no knowledge of what it meant to go ahead and swipe that credit card. And so sometimes we just have to learn the hard way.
Yeah. So our stories are actually pretty similar. So what I mean by that fear based, so I was taught from a fear perspective to not touch credit, but I needed a credit card after college. I didn't need it. Okay. I shouldn't say I needed it. I will say this. Let me be perfectly honest with you. When I graduated from college, I really wanted to buy a MacBook because all throughout college, I had used Mac based software for my degree. I earned a degree in news editorial journalism. And so, one thing I was passionate about was editing newspapers. I really liked playing with layouts. And so, I didn't want to forget the software. So, I wanted to buy a Mac computer. But when I applied with Apple, and it wasn't a specific Apple credit card that I received that you could only use at the Apple store. It was a Chase card. And when I was approved at a $1,500 limit. And I'd never had access to $1,500 at one time in my life. I came from a time where minimum wage was $8. So I never had access to that much money. Maybe at one time I had access to $400. And my mind was blown when I got approved for a $1,500 credit limit. And that card, from the minute that I applied for it to the minute it hit my mailbox, like it was burning a hole in my wallet. It hadn't even reached my wallet yet, but I was ready to spend that card, and I did not spend it on the MacBook that I wanted to. I went on a shopping spree and I bought jeans, I bought shoes. I went to Nordstrom Rack and I bought all the hair care products, all the hair care tools I'd ever wanted in my life. And I thought, like, well, it's a 0% interest card. I don't have to pay it for 12 months. That's not how 0% interest works. That means you don't have an interest rate for 12 months, not that you don't have to pay it. So when the bill started coming in, I was like, oh, why are they asking me to pay this card right now? I don't owe anything for 12 months. It was not a smart way to begin credit. So, yeah, those are the mistakes that I made in my 20s that I regretted immediately once I learned how they affected my credit.
Oh man, don't you just wish we could go back in time and say, just don't do it because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, with Experian being one of the three credit bureaus, and I know they do a lot more than that, but I do want to spend some time here. Can we just discuss a little bit about credit reports and scores? Because a lot of people that ask me questions about credit don't quite grasp that there's a difference. Your credit score and your credit report are not the same things. Your score is an indication of what's on your report, but I'd love to kind of hear from you some insight and what you think about that and how people can better differentiate the two.
Yes. And I think this misconception comes across because when people tend to access their credit report and their credit score, they're usually applying for some form of credit, right? Not a lot of people proactively access their credit report and their credit score, or they're using a credit monitoring service that also applies a credit score. So they're seeing both at the same time. However, they are completely separate entities. Now, your credit report is your history of your usage of credit. We call it your credit history. And what that is that's information about how you've managed your financial accounts and how those accounts have been reported to the credit bureaus. And we manage them, we update them as soon as we receive information from your creditors about how you're managing the accounts. So let me explain how the credit reporting cycle works. So once you open a credit account, it's then reported to the credit bureaus. And how you pay that account is reported monthly. So they continue to update the accounts every 30 days with how much have you charged? How are you paying it off? Are you paying it off or have you missed a payment? All of that information gets reported to the credit bureaus and we store that information. Then when you go to apply for credit with a future lender, we provide that credit report to that lender, and then they may route it through a specific credit scoring model. Now, these are two completely separate processes, credit reporting and credit scoring. Credit scores are managed by the credit scoring modelers like FICO or VantageScore, but there are hundreds of credit scoring models in existence. There's also industry specific credit scores, and they all weigh information differently. And how they weigh that information is proprietary to them, but it's important to know that there are a lot of different models in existence. So you want to think of your credit report kind of like your report card. It's your history of how you did in your classes, and then your credit score is that grade that's applied or that GPA. It's the GPA. So it's a cumulative of everything that's listed in your credit report. That's a way to think about credit reports and credit scores, but they are completely different processes.
That is incredibly helpful. And you said something that I think makes sense. Everybody kind of uses their own scoring model and it's proprietary to them. And I was just going to ask you, credit scores seem to vary across different lenders and even different credit bureaus who do show that information. And it sounds like the true reason for that is because everybody uses a model that's slightly different. Is that pretty much accurate?
Well, it's actually a couple of things. So it could be that your creditor doesn't report to every credit bureau. So when a credit score is applied, the information may be different in the three different credit bureaus. So that could be one of the reasons why your credit score may vary. You may not have as much credit history with one bureau as you do with others. And that's specific to the lender. So they determine who they're going to report to.
Is that common, Christina? Do you see that often where lenders will only pick one credit bureau or two credit bureaus to report to and not the third?
It's not as common, but it is a possibility.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's like super common, but it is a possibility. And it depends on the lender, maybe how big they are. And then to your point, the type of credit score that's applied to the credit report, that could change the number that you're seeing. So it could be that the lender used their own scoring method. It could be that they use a FICO score. It could be that they use a Vantage score, and they all weigh information differently. And that's why you may see a difference. That's why it's really important we tell people don't focus on the number, focus on the information that's in your credit report. Get your credit report at least once a year, but if you can get it more often, I recommend doing that. A lot of people don't realize that they can access their free credit report. It used to be annually from annualcreditreport.com from each of the three credit bureaus. But during COVID, we made it possible for them to access their credit report weekly. And we just decided that we would keep that process going. So now you can access your credit reports weekly from annualcreditreport.com. And that way you can stay on top of the information that's reported to each of the three credit bureaus. But I also recommend signing up for a credit monitoring service. Experian offers a free monthly credit monitoring service where you can see your credit report and your FICO score. So when you access your credit report from the annualcreditreport.com, you're only going to get your credit reports. If you want to get your credit score, you need to go through a different process where you may have to pay for it. But through Experian's free credit monitoring service, you can access both for free monthly.
Oh, that's super helpful. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about some of Experian's tools. I actually recommend my clients as part of like the work I do to pull their credit reports from annualcreditreport.com. And I did see the change to weekly. And I think the slogan still says due to COVID, we're doing it weekly, but it's so nice to hear that that is going to continue at least for the time being. That leads me to a question for you. So you mentioned that, every 30 days, the lenders are sending their information. Could something change within a week, or like, does everybody kind of have like a different time frame for providing the credit history information to the bureaus? Like, Do you get what I'm saying there?
Yes, I do. And that's such a good question. And honestly, no, there's not like on the 15th, you all have to report to the credit bureaus. Everybody has a different date that they report, a different date that they close the statement closing date. Everybody has a different date. And then from there, they begin the process of reporting to the credit bureau. So you're right. If you check your credit report from one week to the next, it could change. But also, if you make a big payment and you're expecting to see that removed from your credit report the next week and you don't see it, it's likely because you just have to give your creditor time to close that statement and then report to the credit bureaus. Or maybe you just barely missed that window where they just closed and they reported. And so you've got to wait another month to see that change.
That is super helpful because I think, I've definitely helped clients try to play the system and figure out the timing. And sometimes you can't figure it out. And now we really know why.
Yeah.
Okay. So when pulling a credit report, obviously, like you said, it shows your credit history and your GPA almost as to how you manage your credit. But I think from what I recall, there are also other things that are shown on your credit report, like last known addresses, I think your employer information, and obviously liens and judgments and stuff like that. If somebody is pulling their credit report and maybe they're doing it for the first time, what are a few important sections or things that they should be looking for as they review it?
Yeah. So your credit report is broken down into 5 categories. Now you have your identification information. So that's what you mentioned, your name, your social security number, your address. All of this information came from applications of credit that you submitted. So once you apply for credit with a lender and they report that to the credit bureaus, that information that was listed in that application is what's going to show on your credit report. So it's not a complete job history because maybe you didn't apply for credit when you worked at a certain location. So don't look at it for that type of information. So it's your identification information, then it's your account information. So those are the current open accounts, previous accounts. Closed accounts in good standing will remain on your credit report for 10 years. Your open accounts will remain indefinitely. So you'll see that information on the credit report, as well as if it's installment loan, you'll see the total loan amount, how much you owe, what your monthly payment is likely, and if you've paid on time. If it's a credit account or credit card account, then you'll see the available balance, how much you charged, if you paid on time, how much available credit you have. So that information is listed in the account section. And then there's the public information section. The only judgment included in a credit report is a bankruptcy.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's no tax liens anymore listed on your credit report. No other types of judgments are listed on your credit report. It's just bankruptcies that are listed on credit reports.
Okay. And then medical debt too has been removed from credit reports, right? I think I read something where the medical debt should no longer be reported on your credit. Is that
Medical
okay?
debt under $500 will not be reported to the credit bureaus. However, if it's above that and it's reported to the credit bureaus, you have 365 days to figure out how you can pay that debt off before it will actually show up on your credit report. So that's treated a little bit differently than a regular collection account. So we do give a little bit more leniency so that way you have time to tackle that debt if it is above that $500 threshold. If it's below the $500 threshold, then it will not show on your credit report.
Gotcha. That's incredibly helpful. So
Yeah.
as somebody is like looking through their credit report, what if they see something that is just like not correct? Maybe an account that shouldn't be there. Maybe it's reporting late and they pay on time. Like what should they do if they see that?
Yeah. So if they find out that there's information that is incorrect on the credit report, one of the best ways to rectify that information is to begin the dispute process. Now, if you're looking at your credit report online, you'll likely see a button that says dispute next to that account or that item. And you can click on dispute and you'll give information about why that is incorrect. You want to be specific about why that information, you believe that information is incorrect. Then the bureau will act on your behalf to go back to that lender and say, this person says that this information is incorrect. Please perform a review and then get back to us with the determination of is it correct or what needs to be changed. And then if it is in fact incorrect, we'll change that information. That lender will also need to report to any other bureaus that it reports to that information needs to be changed. However, it's always best for the consumer to still stay on top of that lender and ensure that they do that. Now, you want to give 30 to 45 days for that process to be completed, but oftentimes it's completed within just a couple of days.
Wonderful. That's very helpful. And it's nice to know that it seems like an easy process, at least if you're looking online and seeing the account that's inaccurate.
Yes, and you can also do it by telephone or by mail if you need to. If you're not looking online, you can still do that process. If you go to experian.com/dispute, we have directions for how you can do that.
Okay. And just kind of going back to what you said. So, someone disputes through Experian. Experian will work with the lender. If it's valid, it'll get fixed. The person or the consumer doesn't need to reach out to TransUnion or Equifax, right? I mean, you're basically saying the lender should be doing that on their behalf. Is that accurate?
The lender should do that on their behalf. However, they should access their credit report still and make sure that it's done. If it's not done, I mean, unfortunately, this is a process that you have to go through with lenders just to ensure that it does happen across the board to anybody that they report to. It's still really important to advocate for yourself and make sure that that lender removes that incorrect information if it is in fact incorrect. Now, if they come back and they say, actually, no, it is correct, and you disagree with them, you do have the option of placing a statement of dispute on your credit report where you explain exactly why you disagree with what they're reporting, and then that will be listed on your credit report. Now, negative information will remain on your credit report, like a missed payment or a late payment or anything that's 60, 90 days late. All that information is going to remain on your credit report for 7 years from the original missed date. And if you've added a statement of dispute, it's always best to stay on top of that, because once it falls off, you don't want to have that statement of dispute sitting in your credit report. So you want to ask the bureaus to remove that statement of dispute once it does fall off.
That is very helpful. So I think we have covered if someone sees something that shouldn't necessarily be there, is inaccurate, they know how to handle that. What if there is an account that doesn't belong to them, or they see under the addresses that they live in California, but Ohio, somebody applied for credit? I mean, at what point do we see identity theft flags or triggers, and what do they do at that point?
Yeah, so this could be a sign of fraud. And that's a really good point to bring up. This is actually why I believe it's really important that you're checking your credit report often. That way you can spot those things right away, especially if you have a monitoring service that will ping you like, hey, there's been a new address added to your credit report. Maybe you should check that out. Or this new account just showed up in your credit report. This is something that you should review, so especially if you didn't actively go and open that account. Or if you get an alert that says, hey, your account balance increased significantly, that's just another sign that maybe your information has been accessed fraudulently and you need to take action. So I would like to recommend that people go to experian.com/fraud if they find out that they've been a victim of identity theft, because we have all the steps broken down there for you. But just some high level steps that you can do is add a fraud alert to your credit report. When you add a fraud alert, this will let the bureaus know that if somebody applies for credit in your name, they need to contact you to ensure that it is in fact you that is applying for credit. And when you add a fraud alert to one bureau, it's automatically going to be added to the other two bureaus. Now, this is going to slow down that approval process and allow you to take action. If it's not you, you can let them know right away, no, do not assign credit in my name. And then when you add a fraud alert to your credit report, you're also going to get access to a free credit report. Now, it's really important for the second step to review that credit report and look for any accounts that you are not familiar with, any addresses you are not familiar with, because this could be a sign that somebody applied for credit in your name under a different address. And so you need to look for that type of information. Also for inquiries, because this will show that somebody has tried to apply for credit in your name and that you may need to take action. The third step is you want to file a police report. When you file that police report, this is really important, because if you go to your creditor and you say, my information was used fraudulently to open an account, and here's the police report that I have filed. It can help you in that process of getting those accounts closed, getting any money back the person may have taken from your own credit accounts. It just makes that process a little bit smoother. And then it also validates that claim, like, look, here's the deal, but I went to the police department, I filed the report, here it is, take action now, close that account. And then also, if you want to add a 7-year fraud alert, sorry, that's an extended fraud alert after that first year has passed, you will need to have that police report to do so.
Oh, wow.
Then the last step that you want to do, make sure you contact you don't have to do these in this exact order, but it is helpful just to have this documentation in place. But contact those creditors right away and let them know, I was not the one that made those charges. I was not the one that opened the account. You need to close it. And then you can provide them with the proof that you have, that you've taken action, that you filed that police report, and that they need to take action on your behalf, and make sure that they take those accounts off your credit reports, whoever they've reported it to. So that way it can protect you.
I'm so glad you mentioned filing a police report. I feel like that's not a step, at least that I'm familiar with or that is commonly talked about. I think because it's a little frightening, but it sounds like it's such an important part of going through this process and coming out of it, in the best way possible.
Yeah, my boss has this story, Rod Griffin. He has this story about how somebody had filed tax returns in his name. And he went to the police department, like he thought they were going to be like, oh my gosh, we got to get these guys. But he went there and he said, look, my information has been accessed. Somebody filed a tax return in my name and I want to report this. And they're like, okay, here's a form, fill it out. And then that was basically it. He said it was so lackluster, but at least he had that documentation. It may not start a whole huge investigation, but at least you have the paperwork there.
I feel like I would be like him, like, get the FBI financial crimes unit in here. This is going down.
Exactly.
Well, that was very helpful. Thank you so much for that. Honesty time. Money management is not rocket science. It just feels that way because we tie our emotions, experiences, and sometimes our self-worth to our money. That needs to change, and I'm on a mission to help drive that change. In my new free masterclass, I'm sharing 3 ways to master your money and budget to see instant results. I'm going to show you how to level up your finances so you can begin to see forward progress with your goals and have something to show for the money you work so hard for. The masterclass is only here for a short time and it's happening soon. So save your spot now by going to citygirlsavings.com/masterclass. I can't wait to see you there. Now I want to transition into talking about credit versus debt, because I feel like this is a very important part. I think you and I both want listeners to understand. In my opinion, debt, which is money owed, so money that you owe someone else, comes at a cost via interest, and it hurts, not helps. Credit, on the other hand, can be leveraged in multiple ways that can make the consumer situation better. I know you touched on this a little bit, but I'd love if we can pull the thread through and you can share your thoughts on the differences between the two and how someone can eventually leverage credit the right way and get rid of debt that is not helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, credit is a financial tool. Debt is a financial problem. So credit, when used wisely, can help you to achieve the best possible interest rates when you're wanting to purchase a car, when you're wanting to purchase a home. It can help you to avoid having to pay deposits when you're applying for utilities. It can help you to apply for a cell phone service that you want to use, apply for a cell phone that you want to purchase. Credit can also be used when you're applying for a job. So if you're applying for a position where you may be managing the financials of a company, or maybe you'll even have access to a credit card, your potential employer will want to know that you've managed credit well in the past. And so they were not going to get your credit score, but they're going to get a truncated version of your credit report. And that'll just help them. In some states, they cannot use your credit as like a determinant of whether you'll receive a job or not, but it could weigh a little bit in that decision in the overall process. So that's really important to know. So I always tell people it's important to start building credit as soon as you can, but you want to be smart about how you do it. Don't do what I did. Now, if you apply for a credit card, make small charges and pay them off every single month. When you do this, you're not going to have to pay interest because credit cards often come with high interest. Right now, it's 23, 25% interest that you're going to have to pay on charges that you're carrying over month to month. So when you make small charges and you pay it off, you're showing that you're responsible with credit, that you're not going to over leverage credit. I always recommend charge a gas bill, something that you would normally pay for cash, charge a grocery bill that you would normally pay for cash, or have a reoccurring bill on your credit card. If you have a streaming service that you pay for, have that reoccurring and then just pay that off every single month. That way you're not carrying debt, but you're showing that responsibility. Now, this is going to help you to build credit, to show that you're not over leveraging yourself and that you can manage your payments well. So I want to share that when a credit scoring model is reviewing your credit report to assign a credit score, there are a couple of factors that they take into account. Your payment history and your utilization are the two biggest factors in credit scoring. So when you make your payments on time, you're benefiting yourself. When you're not taking on too much debt, you're benefiting yourself. And then you're not having to pay interest on those charges. So those are some ways that you can use credit wisely.
People really need to be wise because you can easily blur the lines, right? Because yes, credit can help you in getting a job, getting an apartment, things like that, but also can help you obtain a credit card, right? Which comes at a cost. So credit can help you, but if you're not using that credit wisely, that credit line becomes debt that ends up costing you. And I think everything you shared is how people should proceed almost with caution when leveraging credit so that it really does help them and doesn't hurt them like debt essentially would.
It's important to have a budget. That's a fundamental aspect of financial management. So have a budget, know how much you owe every single month, manage your cash flow well. And then when you know, hey, I'm planning to spend this much on groceries and I do have the amount of cash to pay that off, charge that on the credit card and then pay that off. I know it's easier said than done because we live in a society right now that's I want, I want, I want. And you can get a lot of things really fast these days. So it's that instant gratification society, but we almost have to reprogram ourselves to not do that. And I'm speaking also to myself when I say that because I do tend to fall into that. Oh, I want it. I got to have it. And then I'm like, now I have to pay that off. Okay, great. But at least I have that knowledge. And this is why it's important to share that. I have that knowledge of, hey, keeping a high credit card balance is going to impact my credit score. So I need to get that down as soon as I possibly can. And that's why I like to share this information with consumers.
I'm so glad that you said have a budget because that is something I've been preaching for over a decade. I always mention it on the podcast. I feel like a budget is the number one tool for success with your money because it tells you what you can and can't afford, right? And if you want to go on that shopping spree, look at your budget and see how much of a shopping spree you can afford. And if it's not $1,000, then don't go spend $1,000.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Budget even just a little bit of fun money. That fun money can be put on your credit card and then paid off. And guess what? You'll get to have a lot of really fun things, but you still get to pay it off at the end of the month because you use the money that you knew you were going to have available.
Exactly. And then you can take it to the next level. This is probably a conversation for another episode, but you can take it to the next level and use like a rewards card for that. And as long as you pay it in full, you get the points and it's a fun time.
Exactly. I'm trying to get some Disneyland tickets. And so I'm trying to use points so that I can get a Disney card so that or a Disney gift card so that I can buy those tickets with the points. There's fun ways to work the system too when you know how to use credit.
Exactly. But it all kind of goes back to the budget and knowing what you can afford and making sure you stick to your limits.
Yes, absolutely.
So, one thing I would love your insight on is when it comes to, well, a couple things. So, first, when it comes to paying your balance in full, I have clients who like to just pay their balance off every week. I have clients who just pay the statement balance in full every month. Is there a right or wrong way to do it that will have a bigger impact on your score? Like, does it all kind of even itself out, or is there one way to do it that will have the most impact to your score in a positive way?
So there are a lot of people that really pay a lot of attention to statement closing date and due date, because those are two separate dates, right? The statement closing date, that's when they close those books, but your payment may not be due for another week or so after that. And if you are able to pay the payment down before the statement date, so that just means you're going to reduce the balance that's going to get reported to the credit bureaus. That's great because then it's reducing the utilization that's going to be reported to the credit bureaus. But if you're making your payments on time, that's the number one factor. Make those payments on time. And then if you're going to pay it down anyways, maybe the next month you'll see that change. Unless you absolutely are going to be applying for some form of credit, or you know that, oh, I need to have this specific credit score to qualify for a home loan. I'm ready to go apply for this home loan. Then you can really get into the weeds. But if you're making your payments on time every single month and you're keeping those balances low, I say below 10% if you can. A lot of people say 30%, 10% or below, or pay it off in full if you can. That's going to be the most beneficial for your credit score. So if you're just like living day to day and you don't plan to apply for anything, don't be so nitpicky about when and how much. Just make sure that you're making those payments on time. When I say when, I mean by the statement date or the due date. Don't be so nitpicky. Just make sure that you're making those payments on time and you're paying that balance as much as you possibly can in full would be the best, but get that credit utilization down and your credit will be just fine.
Okay, that's very helpful. You've mentioned utilization a few times, and I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is utilization looked at per account or overall? So if you have three credit cards, two are 50% utilization and one is 10% utilization, are they going to take the average of the three, or is it looked at per account?
You're not going to like this question, but it depends. Honestly, some credit scoring models look at individual balances and some look at the cumulative. So it depends on what credit scoring model it is. So it's always best just not to carry a lot of debt on your credit cards overall. Try to aim for that 10% balance. But yeah, many of the credit scores weigh that completely differently. So I always just say try to focus on just not carrying a lot of debt on those credit cards so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, don't try to figure out who's doing what, who's scoring what. Just
Yeah.
keep your utilization low. I
Yeah.
gotcha.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I'm sure listeners hearing this are probably, chuckling to themselves. But hey, if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do.
Mhm.
Okay, so we kind of talked about judgments, bankruptcies, only judgment, liens aren't really reported. What about collection accounts? Obviously, they are reported, but are there any important things you think listeners need to know about collection accounts? Maybe how to get them off their credit report or when they fall off? Just anything you could share about that.
Yeah. So collection accounts are going to remain on your credit report for 7 years from the original missed payment date. So that original date that the account was late and never paid. So it's important still, if you can, to pay the collection account, especially because if you're planning to apply for a home, they're going to require that you have any outstanding collection accounts paid. So it'll work to your benefit. Also, even though it's not going to fall off your credit report when you pay it right away, some credit scoring models don't factor in a paid collection account. So it'll show paid on the credit report, but it'll still be there. But some credit scoring models don't factor that in. So that could also work to your benefit. So although it does take 7 years, because remember your credit report is a credit history, it's a history of your usage of credit. So if you miss the payment, that's going to remain for 7 years. If you have a collection account, that's going to remain for 7 years, but you're still going to benefit yourself by paying it off. That way, at least it'll hopefully affect you less because you handled it.
Yeah. Okay. That's very helpful. I know there are a lot of people out there, services out there that advise don't pay it and things
Mhm.
like that. And it's good to know from somebody in the industry what the best course of action is.
Yeah, also because they're relentless in how they contact you. And even though you can report that, there's a phone number that you can report I'm being harassed by this creditor. It still doesn't feel good when you're carrying debt and somebody's calling you and you know that somebody wants money from you. So for your own mental health, it's almost better just to tackle that if you can.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like my peace of mind is everything. So if somebody's
Mhm.
going to be calling me night and day, take the money and leave
Yes,
me alone.
please. So I had a credit card that never went to collections when I was in my 20s, but I had just run up that credit card balance. I had a credit card that had never went to collections, but it was a collections department from my credit card that was calling me. And I'll never forget her. Her name was Simone. And it was the same person because it was with a very small credit union. And Simone is the person that really taught me. If you sometimes it helps to pick up the phone. Simone is the person that really taught me as a young 20-year-old everything that I was doing to my credit. Because she was like, Christina, you don't pay, we're going to have to report you to the credit bureaus. And I was like, and what? I don't have money. Like, and what? What does that mean? I don't know what you mean when you tell me that. And she was like, well, this is how it could impact you. And she was the first person that made the light bulb kind of click of like, ooh, okay, so this is not a good thing. I knew it wasn't a good thing, obviously, because she was calling me, but the fact that she was on the phone with me and she had this tone of like, I understand, but you need to figure out how you can at least make a minimum payment on that card, or you need to pay consistently. And then that started like me starting to research, okay, how do I pay my credit cards down? And then a couple of other factors in my life that happened really made me realize, oh, wow, I really did make a big mistake. But picking up that phone, honestly, was what started me on that journey to figure out how credit works and how I had impacted myself.
And Christina, look where it led you, helping other people.
Exactly.
That's very inspiring because I know having debt myself in the past, like sometimes it feels so overwhelming and just like there's no way out. And it's nice to hear stories like yours where you actually can turn things around with the right education.
Yes, absolutely. And not to derail things, but like when I started at Experian, I had only been maybe 3 years into the rebuilding process. And I had a friend that actually came to work at Experian in the IT department, and I was working on social media. And she referred me for the job, and I was like, but they're a credit bureau. My history with credit is not very good. Like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And when I applied, I really liked the culture at Experian, and I loved the person that I interviewed with. His energy was so good. And our interview was like an hour long and it was just a conversation. It just felt very natural. I was telling my husband, and I went home and I said, that was such a good interview, but I don't know if I'm going to get this job because of my history with credit. And I even told the HR person when she called and offered me the job and she said she was going to run my credit, I said, look, I really like this position and I'm working on rebuilding my credit, but it's not where it should be. And I would love it still if I was given the opportunity to work. And she's like, relax. It's going to be okay. It's not that big of a deal. And in California, they actually can't use your credit as a determination to not give you a job. That's one of the states that doesn't allow that. But I was so grateful when I did get this job. And then it was like, for me, I'm a big believer in God and paths in life. And I feel like this was kind of a gift from God because when I was working here, I was tasked with doing credit education on social media. And I told my boss, okay, I love social media, but let me tell you, my credit was in the dumps at one point in my life, and I've been working to rebuild, and I don't know that I'm the best person to do this. And he was like, actually, no, you are the best person for this because you've been in the weeds and you've had to dig yourself out of it and you're in the process of it. So bring that angle to the credit education that we're providing. And he said, I will give you the tools, I will give you the knowledge, I'll share all of the resources that we have with you. He gave me like a month to really absorb all of our materials. And then he connected me with my now boss, Rod Griffin, who was our credit expert. And Rod was just such a resource. I felt like I had the keys to the kingdom, and when we started working on campaigns together and I started to learn about credit. And that's really when the ball started rolling. I was like, I need to share this information because I don't want anybody to experience what I did. And so sorry to derail that conversation, but I really want to share that because that's why I'm here and I'm able to do this.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills. And you're definitely where you're meant to be. And I honestly feel that would make someone want to learn from you over someone who never had struggles and always had money and always pay their credit cards, right? Like, I don't care what you have to say because you don't know what I've been through. So I
Yeah.
love that, like, you've actually been through it. It's very similar to my story. Like, it's once you've been through something and you know that there's a way out and you know the steps to get out, like, you got to share that information and pay it
Mhm.
forward and help our society. So I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And that's why I love connecting with people like you because exactly what you said, this is information that you've learned that you want to share. And that's why I love to do these type of interviews.
Yay. Well, I have a feeling that we'll have you back if you're okay with it. I would love to just pull the City Girl Savings community for questions and then get you back on
Yes,
and answer them. Awesome.
absolutely. Please.
Yes. Well, I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time talking about some of the tools and resources that Experian offers consumers, whether they're free or paid. Are there a couple that come to mind that you want to make sure that listeners know about?
Yes, absolutely. I recommended throughout this podcast our free credit monitoring service. You get access to your Experian credit report as well as your FICO score monthly. And that's a fantastic service because you're also going to get those notifications that I mentioned about, hey, did you open a credit account? Or, hey, your balance increased. Or my favorite notifications are, hey, your balance decreased and it impacted your credit score. Or your credit score just improved. Your credit score just went up a couple of points. I love those notifications. I live for those notifications. I'm like, yes, okay, let me go see what happened. So definitely check that tool out if you can. I also recommend follow us on social media because we're on just about every social media platform, but we also host credit chat conversations every Wednesday on X, and we discuss a different aspect of personal finance. I'm really excited. You've been involved in several of our chats. So this is just a really great platform for people to learn about different aspects of personal finance from experts like yourself. And it's one of my favorite things that we get to manage every single week. It's been going since 2012, I believe.
Wow.
And so it's a really fantastic resource for people to learn about financial topics. So definitely be sure to tune into those conversations every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time on X. Any other tools are, if you have any question about credit, one thing I always recommend people do is if you have a question about credit, type in Google, take collections, for example. What should I do if I have a collection account? And then include in that Ask Experian. And we have a blog article about just about any credit topic. So Ask Experian is the name of our blog. So if you go to experian.com/Ask Experian, there's so many articles there. But if you just want to look up a specific credit question, if you type that in and then do Ask Experian, I'm almost positive there's some article that we have that can help you to learn more about that aspect of credit.
Oh, that's wonderful. I will be sure to link to that in the show notes. I'll definitely be sure to link to all of Experian social media channels. Those X chats are so fun to be a part of, but also so fun to just watch and learn from and hear what other people have to say in the industry. So I will definitely share that. And yeah, Christina, this was such a wonderful conversation. I feel I learned a lot, and I have no doubt that listeners in the City Girl Savings community have also learned a lot. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Please have me back anytime you'd like. I'm always happy to come back and answer any more credit questions. This is what I love to do.
Oh, I have no doubts you'll be back.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for letting me be the money coach in your ear today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the City Girl Savings Podcast and you feel empowered and motivated to take the next step in the journey to your dream life. Remember, if someone like me, a millennial who loves to travel, new experiences, and iced coffees can live a life they love on a budget, you can too.